Thanks for the great intro. Appreciate it, and really great to be here with everybody. As Bartosz and Justina said, my name is Justin Gitlin. I also go by Cacheflowe. You can find me at cacheflowe.com or at Cacheflowe on the internet. So I've traveled here from Denver, Colorado, United States. Really nice to be here in Krakow. So this talk is called User Experience Design for Physical Digital Interactive Installations. So I'm not a UX designer or a designer at all. I'm a software developer and a creative technologist. But no matter what you're creating, I think it's important to participate in the UX design decisions to help your software work for humans. So I'm here to talk to you about some of the things that I've learned while building a number of interactive installations, which has been my focus over the last 6 years or so. So, what are interactive installations? An interactive installation is a site-specific piece of art or experience that participants can interact with in a physical way. This is pretty vague, but at their simplest, it could just be a computer program running on a screen. At their most robust and artistic, this work that I'll show is some of my inspirations and is more along the lines of what people think when you say interactive installation. So we just heard a bit from Raven Kwok, who does some amazing interactive installations as well as music videos. Similarly, Ryoji Aikida also uses software to generate massive projected content that envelops your peripheral vision. You have artists like Nonotac Studio who are doing interesting things with lighting, architectural elements, animation, and other mediums. One of my favorite artists or artist groups, TeamLab, they're also from Japan. They're doing great work with robotic lighting, projections, immersive environments. Daniel Rosen has a great series of interesting robotic and physical mirrors that use depth cameras and computer vision and mechanical devices to recreate your likeness. So really interesting mirrors. Daito Banabe and Rhizomatics Research do incredible real-time works involving cameras and computer vision and robotics as well. This piece by Random International is called The Rain Room, which uses cameras and motion detection to prevent rain from falling on its users. TeamLab, again, built this really interesting infinity room using mirrors and user-controlled lighting elements. Really interesting architectural setup. Jen Lewin builds massive playful objects that act somewhat like a mesh network playground. Very playful. These swings from Daily Tous les Jours in Montreal begin to make music as more people swing in tandem. So a playground becomes a musical instrument. Design.io builds immersive museum exhibits packed with technology to make every surface interactive. So using tons of projectors, cameras, etc. And finally, this piece of software from some of my favorite people in the interactive art world combines custom computer vision algorithms to augment your body in real time, giving a playful sense of body dysmorphia. So why interactive installations? I think they can be immersive, impressive, magical. They're site-specific, so you have to be there, which I think is sort of special in this day and age. They can be incredibly unique in terms of cross-discipline collaboration, which is something that really interests me. As a creator, it's amazing to see the smiles or wonder on people's faces as it's happening. The web or building apps doesn't usually give you this satisfaction of seeing people actually really enjoying what you've built. These days, when I think of innovation coming out of Silicon Valley or the tech world, I think of this or this. And I've done a bit of VR and augmented reality work, and I really enjoy it, but I think there's an obvious problem here. My friend Brian Corrigan says that this isn't a technology problem, but it's a design problem. Technology is being designed in some unfortunate ways, but I'm excited to create magical experiences in the real world to enhance and reinforce our humanity rather than obscure it. So interactive installations build on a lot of older concepts, which we can use to build up our idea of how we might approach their UX design. So let's break down the underlying environments and user interactions that compose interactive installations. So there's the traditional art gallery where you look but don't touch. There's traditional public art and sculpture. It can be monumental, interesting to look at it. You can maybe sit on it, but it doesn't do much. There's art that you can walk around or underneath and is more of an experience than an inanimate object that you can just look at. It really invites you to interact with it. There's art that looks nice, but also invites you to touch it. Maybe get inside of it or talk into. There's art that demands your physical participation to be fully realized. So now, by adding software and sensors to these traditional forms of art, we have interactive installations that can respond to the user in more than just a mechanical or kinetic way. So I'd like to mention some user experience design frameworks that we can look to for inspiration of how we might design these experiences. So human-centered design is all about concepting, prototyping, observing your users, and then iterating based on that observation. There's design thinking, which has similar steps and is a new buzzword in organizational and product optimization. There's the field of ergonomics, which attempts to improve products and experiences based on the human form. There's evidence-based design, a process that IDEO has used to build a better hospital, for example. There's placemaking, which is a multifaceted approach to the planning, design, and management of public spaces. A lot has been written about the user experience design of Disney theme parks. In the 1960s, when the concept of placemaking was first being formulated, Walt Disney came up with a manifesto for creating a great user experience at Disney World. And you should definitely read this article when you get a chance. I think it applies to any UX design. And finally, there are some interesting theories. There's also this concept of desire paths, which is used as a metaphor in web and app design. But it's actually a tangible part of physical UX design. So how can we reduce friction and appeal to our users' instincts and desires without slowing down the path to a great experience? And finally, there are some interesting theories to read about inclusive playground design and how these playful spaces should engage our senses and engage each other. So all of these design frameworks are applicable to web and app UX as well, so they're worth a look, I think, no matter what your discipline. So let's go back to human-centered design, which is, again, all about concepting, prototyping, observing your users, and iterating. So we need to ask, who are our users, and what do we expect them to do? What is the goal of the installation? Is it to have fun, to play a game or compete, to collaborate with each other, to strengthen a community or build empathy, to get exercise or to dance, for marketing purposes, to increase brand awareness, or is it just a cool piece of art? There are a lot of different types of goals here, and there are a lot of different types of humans. And the difference between people in physical space becomes a lot more pronounced, since your users are no longer hiding behind a screen. And this is where the observation step of human-centered design, I think, is so important. So, to sort of recap, different types of humans. We have children who, generally speaking, are very exploratory and open. From my experience, they want to touch every screen. They think every screen is a touch screen. We have entire families with their own dynamics and age representations. We have adults who are maybe more conservative with their behavior. We have adults who act like children. Teenagers who might not want to look stupid in front of their friends, so maybe are more hesitant to get out there and do things in front of everybody. We have elderly folks who I've seen often don't want to touch the technology because it looks expensive and they don't want to break it. We have people who might be disabled and are often left out of experiences due to accessibility issues. And we have people who bring their dogs everywhere. We have people who are uninterested in cool things. We have people who read instructions or never will. People who are troublemakers and will break all the rules. So with all these different types of users, we hope to gain a few more of them with each one of our user experience design choices. So my advice for dealing with these human, spatial, and experiential issues. First, we're talking about multidisciplinary collaboration with interactive installations. So you might be working with architects, fabricators, lighting and sound professionals, athletes, or other domain-specific professionals, depending on the theme of the installation. User experience designers for the web are supposed to have working knowledge of user interface design and software development, so they can conceptually tie it all together to create a seamless end-user experience. User experience design for interactive installations requires working knowledge of any number of other disciplines. So this is a project called Dance Lab that I built last summer for the Denver Art Museum, which is in my home city. So we were faced with questions like, how do you get people to dance? And how do we sync up the music in the room and make everybody look good dancing after we record them? So you need people on the team who can act as the glue for these disparate disciplines. You hear people talk about empathy in design or empathy in technology to better serve your users, but we also need empathy for our collaborators if we want to build something that makes sense. So here's the end result of the interaction, which has 9 participants dancing together in sync with each other and in sync with the music in the room on a life-size 12-meter wide projection. And yes, that is me looking like I know how to dance, thanks to technology. So next, we can talk about prototyping. And this type of user experience design must be a collaboration with your technologists. We need to prove the technology and interaction as quickly as possible. An idea might sound good, but not actually feel right once you put it into practice. So this is an example of spending a few hours with code and a little bit of video to prove that it's fun to follow along with an instructional dance video overlaid on top of a real-time camera. It doesn't look like much, but it made it realize that this concept for Dance Lab would actually be fun. Next, we needed a prototype whether the footage that we recorded would sync up with the music. Do all the dancers move at the same time? These problems all had to be figured out early as we compiled the stop-motion recordings. So beyond the technical prototyping, we need to prototype the space itself. So does it feel right? Does it achieve the objectives? And will your technology fit into the room? So here we wanted to create a dance environment that felt like you're dancing with friends, so you could all sort of see each other, and the technology was sort of as small as possible in the center. So testing the limits of your technology, if you're using a Kinect camera, for example, which I use on a lot of my projects, you'll quickly find out that it doesn't work outdoors when the sun is out. The sun interferes with the camera's infrared lights and renders it useless. Another problem with the Kinect is that skeleton detection can fail with small kids or people in wheelchairs, and generally it's not as reliable as you would hope. I found this out the hard way on a project that I built for kids, but I didn't realize how young or tiny the audience would be. But even if the user is too young to understand what they're actually doing and what the project is about, you can't let the technology fail on them. So I haven't done another project with skeleton detection because of how easily it fails, but instead I've built my own user detection tools using just the depth data, so it can't really fail as long as the camera's working properly. So early on, you need to bring in users of different sizes, abilities, and skin colors to test your prototypes. There are lots of unfortunate examples out there of computer vision algorithms failing to work on dark skin, and that's really not okay. So interactive installations have no established user interface conventions. There's no mouse or no keyboard. So you have to educate the user, and you need to set expectations for what the experience should be. So where do we start? If you're visiting a website or download an app, you probably know what you're getting into and what it's supposed to do. But if you walk into an installation for the first time, you might not have any idea as to why you're there. So we can start with physical signage. You've probably seen something like this at a gallery. The problem is very few people actually read the sign. Then there's on-screen user interface. So this is from Dance Lab again. Again, very few people read this. So they could be staring right at your screen, but just not know what to do because they're not actually reading it. So next, you can think about the environmental or interior design that might help people figure out what they're supposed to do. So this is a small art project that I worked on a while back, a little collaboration with an artist friend. And this even says, please touch, which I think, we tried to get the point across. But even still, some people ignore that. But more importantly, the physical layout of the exhibit and the fact that it's in a small gallery gave people the permission they needed to be playful and to touch the exhibit. So next I'll talk about Oh Heck Yeah, which was a public art project in downtown Denver in the form of a street arcade. So we had a massive video game on 3 consecutive street corners downtown Denver And the project ran for the whole summer. Tens of thousands of people came and played our video games for free. And when you came across this, it was pretty clear that something fun is happening, so people would naturally stop and join and play a game. We also made the game interactions as simple as possible so that most people could just figure it out by watching other people play. Now this fails when nobody's already using it because crowds attract more crowds. So if nobody's playing it, how do you get the first person to play? Also thinking about environmental design, what can we do to make the world around your exhibit a little more playful? Or how can non-digital decorations reflect the goals of the project? a.k.a. has now traveled around the United States over the last few years, and this summer has been living at the local baseball stadium. You can see here that we have a special corner with game graphics on the wall, which creates a playful area with clearly defined places to stand and start the game. You'll also notice we had gates up in case there were long lines. We realized that this was confusing people and maybe made them think that, oh, this isn't actually something we can use. So we removed them, and people were much more likely to jump in and play. So this goes back to human-centered design. We watched what was happening, and we fixed it. And if a line did form, people just managed it fine on their own. And then keeping the environment open also allows for community self-help and encouragement. You'll find that people are often happy to help each other have a good time. So one very effective way to solve a lot of these open questions is having an attendant, which you think you're building software, but you're actually building a place. And an attendant can draw people in, tell you how to interact with the installation, and correct you if you're doing it wrong. And they can really help to create the right atmosphere. So this is the Denver Art Museum, which is where Dance Lab was. And generally, if you go into a museum like this, you're not supposed to dance. You might get kicked out. And some days we had a really happy attendant who was dancing as you walked into the exhibit. And you could tell right away that this wasn't the usual gallery, and you had permission to dance and let loose. On other days, we would have a docent who was just sort of standing in the back corner, looking at their phone, just acting as security. And on those days, there was a lot less of a fun atmosphere. And so it just goes to show that sometimes you actually really need to tell people that it's okay to have fun. And an attendant can also be completely necessary to the overall plan. So this project was the Nike Air Chamber. We had an enormous cube, pictured there, lined on the inside with high-res LED screens. We attached sensors to the basketball hoop and had a high-def video camera rig to capture you in midair. We also had professional basketball coaches who would turn on the camera and tell you what moves to make. So they were really running the room. And these guys were so fun and engaging that you were having a good time no matter what. And with their advice, you ended up getting a really cool video like this to take home. The technology and environment was really amazing, but it really depended on the interaction with these guys who were running the room and helping you have a good time. So we can see that reaching different users in different settings can require completely different methods. We've looked at public interactive art, museums and galleries, and a special athletic event for branding purposes. But lots of interactive installations are now built for retail situations, which have a totally different set of problems. For example, you're at a store, so you can probably touch everything, right? So this was a fun project that I built the software for. My software was running on these transparent motorized screens at the big Nike store in New York City. They moved on their own all day with motors back and forth, but people wanted to touch them, both as a touch screen, which they were not, and they also wanted to manually push the screens because they saw the screens moving, so hey, I can probably push that. And that ultimately broke the motors. So despite the room being super clean and modern, we had to give in and finally put up some signs so people would stop breaking our installation. So nobody wanted to, but we added do not touch, no sitting, because people would sit on the shelf, which was not built for sitting. And since people don't read instructions, we even put a wire to further prevent people from sitting, because the no sitting sign didn't actually stop people from sitting. So this goes back to our human-centered design concepts, where we observe and iterate until it works for most of our users. So I'll quickly mention some environmental problems that you might have to think about if you're building an interactive installation. Is it outside? And how cold does it get? So this was in Toronto. It was sub-zero temperatures, freezing cold. Everybody's bundled up but still frozen. And you have to think about, will your technology freeze? Or in extreme heat, do you need air conditioning? So this was the project inside of this bus. We had these iPads on tracks in a bus. And the batteries only lasted about 30 minutes because it was so cold. So these are things you have to think about. We added space heaters after the fact, but it should have been planned beforehand. So next, we can talk about sharing, which I think if you go to these cool experiences, you want people to share what they've done to help build some hype around it. So the industry buzzword is the shareable moment. So what's the takeaway? What can you give your users? If possible, you should give them a custom piece of content so they remember the good time that they had and hopefully post it on Instagram or wherever. So this was a photo booth or a video booth that I built for an event in Toronto again, and everybody loved seeing themselves on screen. And you can see this woman smiling and pulling out her phone to take a video of her video. And so my opinion is that it's best to let users make their own content. You can create a video or photo to be emailed to them, but people don't like giving away their email address. So instead, you can let the user become the star of the show and give them a chance to make their own video. People love seeing themselves on a big screen like this, so giving them the opportunity to make their own content will much more easily create an ambassador for your project. So beyond social sharing, what can the takeaway be? How about completely custom sneakers? So this is a project that I just finished in New York City. It's currently running for the next month or so, called the Nike Maker Experience. I built this pattern generator that ultimately gets printed on a pair of sneakers in under an hour, which is the big story for Nike. So another partner agency built this real-time sneaker projection system, and only professional athletes and fashion professionals, models have been let in so far. Hopefully it becomes a public thing. But that's all I can say about this one for now, but I'm excited to see how on-demand custom products could maybe be built using interactive graphics technology. So finally, to sort of put it all together and sort of think about one overarching concept that I always go back to is this quote from John Maida that recommends combining familiar elements with shiny new technology. Because by giving your users an anchor with the familiar, their adoption of the new will be that much easier. So what we're really trying to do is do storytelling rather than showing a technology demo. And for this to be effective, we should keep it simple, familiar, and give people a little taste of the future. And with that, thanks so much for having me. Dziękuję.